We're gonna let's bring this meeting to order.
It only took like 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's all right.
This guy too.
Oh,
So I was
John,
Hey,
Sorry.
bring it
started without you.
I was having a good time.
I know.
We're not here to have a good time.
All right.
Yeah.
What?
I came to it.
We all know our roles.
Yes. Well, let's go then.
Well, let's go, yeah, do a roll call. Amy, why don't you start?
Amy Monahan.
Sid Blodgett. Joe Palulik. John Day. Aaron Farbo.
Tim Young. Joseph Adeletta.
David Morse. And John, just keep an eye out for Mark Blackmer. He might be coming online.
Okay.
Because he said he wasn't gonna be here in person.
Yep. Okay.
What's next?
Uh,
Oh, designated alternates, designate John and Amy. And, Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now, on to the POCD draft.
so I'm gonna change my shared screen to the actual draft document. But hopefully everyone who wanted a hard copy was able to put their hands on one.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, there were a couple of additional ones that we added down there so people can grab. Mr. Chairman, how would you like to proceed?
Well, I guess we'll just kind of go section by section.
Okay.
Then we'll
So-
go,
Yeah.
the introduction is pretty basic. I don't, anybody have any questions on that or comments?
So it's just, yeah, the introduction section is really just the background of what a plan is in general terms, what our state statutory responsibilities are. There's, a whole bunch of things on page, does this have page? Yeah, page 3, that we have to consider: future land use, affordable housing, water supply, cluster developments, energy, and that sort of thing. We review this. We're responsible for a level of consistency with both the regional plan, which is to say the NECOG plan, and the state plan. NECOG, as of this writing, and actually I have as of September 2025, we can now say May 2026, still does not have a regional plan. So there's really nothing to compare in terms of consistency. Although there are planning efforts, broadly speaking, local economic development, agricultural preservation, open space preservation, that I think is, broadly supported by this plan. The state has a plan that obviously we need to be consistent with as well. It's a relatively new plan. It was adopted about this time last year, 2025, with a focus principally on directing growth towards areas of existing or planned infrastructure, preserving large chunks of open space, focusing on things like transit-oriented development, and regional economic development. We kind of go through several of the key elements, particularly creating a sustainable, equitable, and just, vibrant, and resilient. These are sort of the themes, the vision of the state plan. And we kind of break down in the local plan introduction, our broad consistency with the state plan, I think, which we found to be, quite consistent. I'll stop there, but I'll slow there. And if someone wants to jump in with a question or a comment, we can stop. Otherwise, I'll just, yeah. Oh.
I have a comment on page 5, in the last paragraph. There's a sentence that says the existing sewer and water service area can also support a variety of additional housing units. Is that private sewer you're talking about? Because I thought the Putnam line was not available for any other development in Woodstock.
It can, they
Well-
just choose not to be.
So
They
is this a statement then?
can also, no, so I mean, there are properties, there are, dozens and dozens of properties that are served by Putnam Sewer that could increase their density. That without creating an additional connection. And obviously we have a general sewer avoidance or non-expansion policy with our existing sewer service area, but that doesn't mean that the properties that are already inside it or hooked up could not provide those opportunities.
Okay. All right, so that's not hooking new things up, so it's expanding me. Okay. All right,
Right. So I mean, when we say existing sewer and water service, but we could say, through
Well, you can rewrite it and say, could theoretically also support a variety to be more accurate.
That was a lot of words to, a lot of cautionary maybe words.
No,
Could
one extra word.
one,
Could
So-
theoretically support.
I've this is on the fly and I don't know how crisp the picture is, but so I've added the additional housing units through increased density in already served areas.
does that clarify better?
yes.
Okay.
Well, is that really accurate? I thought the sewer avoidance was really based on volume, not so much just.
If a house is already hooked up, they can't tell them that they can't put in an addition, you know what I mean? Like,
Right. Or they can't flush their toilet twice as often.
yeah,
Well, they can't. I understand that, but it sounded like we're talking about maybe going from maybe a single family to a two family or something.
If zoning regulations allow it.
Okay. All right.
We're not talking about extending lines further, although I'm happy to have that discussion should you wish to, but this does not assume that. Okay. So then the next section just goes into the recent history of planning for plans of conservation and development. We go a little bit into the very briefly into the 1990 and 2002 plans. 2015 plan, we deal with, quite a bit. We talk about some of the progress or changes since the 2015 plan, dealing with some of the amendments, creation of the Lake District, changing some of the minimum lot sizes, regulations regarding accessory apartments, and a revision to the subdivision regulations. So we talk about some of these elements. We put in basically a placeholder message from the chairman. I believe this was principally drafted by the prior chairman, between David and Jeff Gordon. It was Jeff Markop. Thank you. So this is something that could be adjusted by Chairman Morse should he wish, but it's just a sort of a placeholder at this point.
John, on page 7, could you
Yes.
just put the bullet points in chronological order?
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I could, sure.
Thank you.
It's a good question. Yep. That's easy enough. So I think we got 2014, 2015, 2019, 2021, 2023. Okay.
And while we're on
Yep.
that page, in the paragraph under the bullet points above the boxed off message, since the number of new houses has yet to rise, would that be the construction of new houses? Number of the construction of, just didn't seem as yet to rise to levels of past decades. Didn't, I had to read it twice to try to.
Okay, wait, let's see. It's the
I guess it makes sense the way it is. I was just like,
maybe how about the rate of new home construction?
Yeah, but isn't that what it's implying? The rate, the
Yes.
construction of new houses is yet to rise to levels of past decades.
If I can spell construction. Yep. Okay. Yep. Sure.
That makes sense.
Okay. And then, and I don't know if this is a little bit clearer. I'm trying to make it somewhat bigger. Is into when we get into the development process of this plan, talking about working, to the transition, working with NECOG and then transitioning over to Tyche, establishing this working group, the planning and zoning, or the POCD working group, chaired by Commissioner Monahan, and several of the surveys and public input sessions. So it's basically just recapping the process, because in the course of POCDs, there really is no state guideline on what must happen, how the plan is developed, and so we just wanted to give a little note about the process, and then we have obviously a blank here because the plan hasn't been adopted yet. That'll be added at the end. Go into acknowledgements again: planning and zoning members, the POCD itself, the commission, the committee, and acknowledging the work of Delia to get us to the point at which we took over. So it's pretty straightforward acknowledgements. I'll stop there before we get into the section 2. Okay. So continuing. So this is, and so this is basically the objective, the background, Woodstock's current status, pulled from a variety of sources, just a very brief history of Woodstock. The other plan that we sort of took over and modified was a lot of detail about the history. I cut it back significantly, basically preferring a relatively short version of this, about the settlement and establishment of Woodstock, just to ground us a little bit, and then getting into population change. We go into our demographic changes, and then it includes projections from 2025 on to 2040. These are projections that were made by the Connecticut State Data Center back pre-pandemic. So whereas it's this isn't the greatest projection in the world, and it did not see the pandemic coming, obviously. But this is the only projection that's happened in Connecticut in the last decade or so. So we just use it as a data point. It's certainly not definitive, and this is not our fate written in stone, but it's an important projection based on demographic trends, and Woodstock is aging. It's aging faster than most of the state. People are having fewer kids, fewer families are moving in, and it is likely that our population is not growing under current conditions. Yeah.
Question, John.
John, I just want to talk a little bit about these graphs. I like them. I'm glad you included them. I like graphics. They tend to tell more of a story than sometimes just the raw data. So as you can all see, the upper graph talks about the past, the lower graph talks about the future, and they tell two very different stories. If you look at the upper graph, the one plotting population over the last 65 years or so, you see this pretty consistent, gentle upward trend. I think the reader might look at this and say, oh, that's okay, that's normal, that's stable, that's perhaps what we want, there's nothing we can really do about it. The reader then might look at that lower graph and say, look at that drop. I mean, what's happening? That can't be good. It's going in the opposite direction of what we've been doing all along. What's the problem here? What can we do? How can we fix this? So I began to regraph this, and I'll get you a copy at some point, but I'm passing out something that I just threw together real quickly. And all I did was to include both sets of data on the same graph. So at this point, we're talking about the same x-axis, the same y-axis, and what I'm passing out tells a very different story. It shows, again, the exact same numbers that are on the graphs in the draft plan, but they're together on one graph. And to me, this says that there really isn't a concerning decline in population, which is, I think, brought up elsewhere in this plan about school enrollment, economic growth, taxes, people aging, so forth and so on. So the graph I just passed out doesn't really show that sharp decline. It simply shows, I don't know, a leveling off, a pause, a break in the increase. To me, those are all good things. This this upward trend were to continue, and it very may well, I think we begin to have some problems as we exceed certain capacities, and whether it's volunteers or classroom size or so forth and so on. But I just kind of pass this out. I'd like you to take a look at it too. Let me know what you think, maybe by the next meeting, and see if this graph is maybe a little more unbiased or insightful than these two contrasting graphs.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, I'll note that, I mean, the first graph is basically 0 to 9,000. So it's got a very broad range. The second graph is only 7,600 to 8,300. So that's only, it's 700 population. And so the precipitous looking drop is, just over 250 people.
John, I just sent you a picture. I just
So did
texted
I.
you.
You're
Okay.
gonna get to
The graph that we're looking at that Sid gave us.
Yeah, Dave took a better picture.
Well, whatever. I didn't say it was better. I said it was there.
Just make the axes the same
Right.
for both graphs.
The same.
That
Yeah.
would solve the problem.
Yeah, so essentially, that's what I did. I
Yeah.
plotted the downward future trend on the same with the same y-axis as the upper graph, the past trend, and you can see how it. Again, my interpretation is it kind of is less dramatic or concerning, or is more of a flattening or a leveling off, or a pause or
Yeah.
a break.
And I don't necessarily think that we made value judgments about the change in population. Sort of, especially because, it's just a projection. It is what it is. But yeah, no, that's fine. We can replot that.
It wasn't my understanding that Sid thought there was any value judgments made there, just what judgments people are gonna draw from the way the graphs.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. But like you said, well, what's wrong? What's happening here? What's going awry? That's not. I'm paraphrasing Sid's statement there, but yeah, I don't think we necessarily stated any of those.
So I do think there's some value in separating the actual numbers from the projected numbers. By having them separate. I mean, if you basically did every 10 years for both graphs, the point would be made the same as what Sid did.
Okay.
What folks do is have a solid line for the past and current trend of whatever, and then that's followed by a dashed line.
That would do.
So we go to the future.
Yeah, that would do.
Okay. Yeah, we'll change that. Other thoughts on this? No? Okay. So then we just go into a little bit of our age distribution. I want to check in about some of the commissions on aging. They had some thoughts initially about the some of the implications of our much older population, the 80 plus, and some of the implications there. We can add some detail there based on the Commission on Aging's commentary. And again, most of this is just basically graph or chart and brief explanation. So our ethnic and demographic breakdown, obviously significantly majority white, relatively aging population, our median and relatively smaller household size, or our decreasing household size, which sort of tracks the regions and is a little bit more precipitous than the state, but we started as a larger household size than state in general, but dropping off from 2.6 to 2.4 persons per household over about 20 years. Again, breaking some of this stuff down, more married households, but the larger increase in single person households, although still, Woodstock is a fairly strong family unit community relative to the COG or the state. And then we get into some of the housing demographics. Again, mostly chart explanation. Obviously a much higher ownership rate than the state in general, and even higher than Northeast Connecticut. Permits have really, as you can see, that when we note the Great Recession in 2007 to 2009, it really kind of dropped off, and we've been kind of bumping along, at under 20, new housing permits every year since. Although home values are continue to rise faster than income. We talk a little bit about the current affordable housing options, primarily at Roxbury Senior Housing, and that the community is down just over 1% of its housing stock being restricted as affordable. And then getting into some of the other town data, these are sort of quick hits, a little bit of our educational attainment, income per capita, employment numbers, talking about our, being a job largely exporter. We had some discussion about whether or not we would consider Woodstock a bedroom community in that way, but it's, we changed some of that language, and it's just basically referring to being a place where most people who are working full time are leaving the town, and it's more people leaving the town to work than entering the town to work. I'm talking a little bit about some of our primary employers, and then get into some poverty statistics, as well as the town's fiscal condition in terms of its grand list, and its per capita revenues and things like that. Again, pretty straightforward data comparing the town conditions to region or state in general. We do get into a little bit of the implications of what our population is looking to do, and so this, I don't know if Sid or anyone else has thoughts about statements that we should be making about implications of some of the demographic changes. But again, again, we have basically a flat to slightly declining population and an aging population, which does have implications for things like some of our volunteerism, some of our school size, and the relatively flat tax base. I'll pause there.
Hey, John?
Yes.
Just a couple real minor comments. Can you go back to page 12?
We can.
Second paragraph that begins with the town.
Mm-hmm.
Says the town is much more homogeneous in race, ethnicity, profile, well, so forth and so on. I'm just wondering, much more than what? Much more than NECOG, much more than the state average, much more than the last POCD? I'm trying to look for some kind of much more.
Well, the second sentence says this is considerably less diverse than the state as a whole. Is that what you mean?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
If you look at the second sentence.
Oh, then the state as a whole. Okay, all right. All right, I got it. Page 13, last paragraph, starting with single. This one about a minor change. Single person households changed the most in Woodstock, the 2.6 increase, while NECOG declined. You mean the NECOG towns?
Yes, yeah.
All right. Next page, 14, looking at the graphic. I assume the building permits refer to new single family home construction, not additions and.
That is correct. That is correct. Right. It's not just like someone adding a deck. That's yes.
Okay.
Should we put that in that heading? Building
Yeah.
permits for new homes? in Woodstock.
And then there's just something I don't understand, maybe you can clarify, at bottom of page 14, that paragraph that talks about home values. So, even though we're at the state average, I'm sorry, I'm reading my notes from a few days ago, but, so even though we're at the state average, is our bottom ranking due to such few houses, or everyone is wealthy in town, or because it isn't an affordable combination? I think what I'm trying to understand is affordable housing. Isn't that a combination of cost of housing and family income?
To a certain extent. It is, I mean, affordable housing, as the state defines it, refers to the formal restrictions placed on the cost of ownership or rental of the unit relative to the income of the occupant or owner. And so few of Woodstock's housing units are restricted. There is, you know, there is not an opportunity for people looking to look at people making less than the median, or in many cases making even the median or even more than the median, to find affordable housing opportunities in Woodstock. So it could be, I mean, it could be that, you know, that Woodstock, let's assume our average, $387,000,
Right.
which I think is probably, actually, we could probably update that. That's probably significantly higher at this point. Actually, I'm gonna flag that. Let's assume every property was exactly that cost, right? Every house in Woodstock was 387,000. Our median income was around 107,000 or something like that. And per traditional mortgage calculations, that's out of range. The average person in Woodstock could not afford the average house in Woodstock, all other things being equal.
So that's why we're at that bottom end of the ranking, because
but the fact that we have no available options or properties that are restricted to be affordable is what places us at the bottom of the state rankings, close to the bottom.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay, all right.
Is it, just following up on Sid's comment, is it appropriate to add some comment about, despite the low affordable housing percentage, the attainable housing percentage in Woodstock is much higher?
I don't know what attainable means, Joe.
Well, I know, but it's in the affordable housing plan, where it might describe the availability of houses that don't meet the deed restriction, but are
which is most of them,
or below the affordable housing level of income and rent. I mean, I think I was going to bring this up when we get to the housing section, because the affordable housing plan did show that there was actually a surplus of attainable housing, but it doesn't qualify for affordable housing because it doesn't meet the deed restriction or cheap financing or the government housing. So I'm just trying to figure out how to balance a legal.
To make us not feel so bad about that.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
To make us not feel so bad about it.
Well, to make it more balanced, instead of leaving it that there's only 1.3% of affordable, which is an accurate statement, but that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story of what kind of housing is available in Woodstock.
Okay. Yep. I mean, I broadly speaking, and I understand the point that you're making, which I think is why it's probably worth double checking or updating the top number to find out what our average housing price is right now. The trick there is that's a moment in time calculation that is constantly in flux, right? So and so I would argue that since 2023 even the attainable, as you say, percentage probably went significantly down because I think our incomes haven't changed, but housing values could have increased 25% over the last 3 years, or 15% over the last 3 years, which erodes that attainable number substantially. So I'll have to see. I assume it was Delia's language about attainable housing. I'll have to.
That's correct.
I want to take a look at how she arrived at that, and honestly, Joe, if I believe that methodology is sound, but I'll take a look, certainly.
I'll wait until we get to page 52, but I want to talk about that table that's there as well to help me understand what the table is saying, which is coming from our affordable housing plan, but we can wait till you get to 52.
Okay.
Page 52.
I'll
If we get to that tonight.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. All right.
John, before you go on, is it appropriate to use the average house price and not median? I feel like most places it's called out as median. Is there a reason why we use average?
Yeah, well, that was what this is actually, I used this data from Delia's drafting. Yeah, no, I mean, I tend to agree statistically that, if you happen to have, for instance, a castle in town that's listed for $20 million, that would tend to skew your average significantly, and would tend to use a more median number. But this was a Zillow statistic, so we can yeah, we'll look at what the best data to cite there is.
Okay, because I think the Zillow Home Value Index does talk about median home values.
Okay. And it's possible. Well, I don't want to say because this was a copy paste from the section of the prior plan. So it's possible that is a median number and that was misstated, but I'll double check that.
Okay.
So I think John's use of average, aren't there 4 kinds of averages? Mean, median, mid-range, and mode. The mean is the exact middle of all of them. So that $20 million castle that John referred is going to skew your mean towards the higher end. The median is you line them all up in order and you just take the exact middle. And I think it's that median that a lot of these studies use because it can't be skewed by some outlier, super high or super low.
Yeah, because the April 2026 Zillow home value for Woodstock is now just under 441,000, which is significantly higher than what you have there.
Let's see. I'm sorry, what is the statistic you're just quoting?
The Zillow Home Value Index median home value for Woodstock is 440, just under 441,000.
Is median.
Connecticut, right?
Yeah. Woodstock, Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm looking at the town profile here. Let me stop my share and I'll put up on the screen. So this is from, and again, so this data was pulled from the earlier draft, and so it's good to identify the stuff that we want to update. So this is from the state of Connecticut's advanced CT data profile. So I don't know if you can see this. So this is our housing profile. This is the American Community Survey 2020 to 2024, which is probably the most recent. Our median home value 417, the state's 366. So the state average, yeah. So right. So we'll put it up the more current, better cited statistic.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. We good with that for right now?
Yes, I think
All right.
we are.
So then we got into town data. So then the vision statement, which is kind of an important thing. So the neither the current plan that we're operating from nor the initial NECOG draft had a vision statement, and that was kind of important to me. I kind of pushed the POCD committee to create one because I think it is important to understand what we're about, what we're trying to get in a relatively concise statement. So if you don't mind, I'll just going to read this, and I would encourage you just to listen to the words. Obviously, we've all read this, but this being the vision statement. The Town of Woodstock Planning and Zoning Commission, in developing this update to the 2015 Plan of Conservation and Development, is led by a strong commitment to preserving and enhancing the historic, scenic, rural agricultural landscape of Woodstock. It is also led by its intent to promote actions and policies that will encourage a community with wider and more diversified opportunities for homes, agriculture, and appropriate industry. The town will seek to balance its stewardship efforts with the need of the community to grow and allow its current and future residents to live, work, learn, and thrive here in a way that fundamentally respects Woodstock's heritage. We envision a Woodstock that protects the natural, cultural, and historic resources that make Woodstock a treasured place, that develops its land and its economy in a way that expands opportunity, that should be in Woodstock, in a sustainable way without sacrificing our history or our future, and enjoys the abundance of resources and opportunities and strengthens the common ties that draw the community together. Over the coming decade, Woodstock will continue to welcome thoughtful development in a town balanced with development in town, balanced with the continued conservation of natural and cultural resources that are essential to the realization of this vision. So that is intended to be the philosophical backbone of this document, and I'd be happy to talk this through if anyone has questions.
I think that captures a lot, John, of what we want to see in Woodstock. I'm very pleased to see the emphasis on the historic, scenic, and rural agricultural landscape. It's important to highlight, and you did do that. So I think it's a pretty good vision statement.
And credit goes to Amy for structuring the protects, develops, and enjoy framework here. So and that's what you'll see. That's basically how we have structured the remainder of the plan into those three broad philosophical buckets.
Nice approach, Amy.
Good job.
Okay.
I think the most impactful part of this whole mission statement for me is the emphasis on like thoughtful development and balance, those little words, because you have the two sides, but you did a really job pulling it together to say we can have both in some degree. It just takes effort and thought.
Mm-hmm.
So,
John, in the last sentence there, it should say resources that are essential.
Okay, good call. And they'll probably, Microsoft Word grammar is going to tell me that I should say which instead of that, but I like that. Okay. Good, thank you. All right, and so then we get into, and then are we ready to move on?
Yes, I don't think anybody else has any questions.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so then the next section is protect, the first of the three sort of philosophical underpinnings of the plan. And so this is basically going through the natural resources and natural, cultural, and historic resources of Woodstock, which should be acknowledged and planned for protection. So then so in here, I basically restated that portion of the vision. We envision a Woodstock that protects the natural, cultural, and historic resources that make Woodstock a treasured place. Go through some, throat clearing about the landscape and the types of, the diversity of habitat and geography that we've got, the ponds, the wildlife, the farms. We talk a little bit about this is important. We talk about the plan of open space and conservation, which was the 2021 or 2001 document. That is essentially the open space plan, the conservation plan. That was going to be updated independently. And we decided as a committee to basically combine the update to the plan of open space and conservation into the plan of conservation and development. So much of the substance of what we had called APOSC, the a plan of open space and conservation, is basically subsumed and inserted into this document. And so we make reference to the key recommendations from the previous, which is to say current plan of conservation, open space and conservation, which was to increase the activity of the Conservation Commission itself, developing a system of greenways, as well as encouraging state policy that would assist communities that wish to maintain a lot of rural character with that effort. And so then we note that this section of the POCD essentially will take the form of the update of that plan, if that makes sense. And so that is why, if you're familiar with the plan of open space and conservation, we're using a lot of these basically thematic sections. So soil, water, air, watersheds, drinking water, wildlife habitat, forest blocks, agriculture. So we sort of go step by step, basically following the plan of open space and conservation with these elements. And a lot of the narrative is fairly straightforward. Kind of the science. What's the geology? How did we get the sort of mix of hills and valleys and wetlands and soil conditions that we have, and then go into the high quality agricultural soils, particularly in the eastern portion of the town, through the soil classifications. And then at the end of each of these sections, you'll note that there are recommendations, and we can highlight these somehow in terms of formatting, but these are essentially the scattered to-do list of the plan. So when we come out of the plan, and you'll note at the very end, we have sort of the implementation table. We have each of these recommendations that are scattered throughout the plan in the relevant sections that are then placed into an implementation table and assigned priority and primary actor and that sort of thing. So it becomes basically the to-do list is scattered throughout the plan in each thematic section. So in the case of soils, the three recommendations are involved with using the farmland soil data for prioritizing soils conservation, providing education to farmland owners about conservation practices and being compensated for them, and farm tax abatements to reduce tax burden on working farms. So that's about focused on the soils.
John, on some of the maps, I have a black and white, obviously, copy of the draft, which is fine. But are the maps a little, okay, they are a little clearer in color.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. So this is just, we can get you color copies at various points, but just in terms of volume printing, and we don't have a good color copy at Town Hall.
That's fine.
Yeah.
The legend is more readable.
Yeah.
Map in the color format. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so this is hopefully people that were using the PDF that was available online saw this stuff in color also. Okay.
John, can you provide links to all the graphs to make things easier? Because there is one for the first graph, the soil graph, but there's not for the subsequent ones.
Yeah, I was actually likely going to take that one out. That was a remnant of, just because over the course of 10 years, I do not trust hyperlinks to remain.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would actually, Aaron, we can do that. My inclination would be to use fewer, not more.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'm so used to reports and put links in that. Yeah, somebody's going to read, forget about in a year. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you for pointing that out. And sorry to go the other way on you.
But
Okay, so again, so that's, the rest of this section, we go through soil classifications. It's basically, sort of a sort of scientific or geographic topic, and then making a couple of the recommendations. I don't know if it's worth your time for me to just sort of read through this stuff, but the majority of this follows that same model. So we talk about soils first, then our water resources and our hydrography. Obviously, our stream corridor is extremely important. Our watersheds, our lake systems, the fact that we're in a public drinking water supply in East Woodstock and a public drinking water supply in West Woodstock. One goes to Putnam, one goes to Willimantic, and then it's sort of scientific facts of a little bit of analysis, and then a series of recommendations. So, and I'll sort of keep vamping here until someone interrupts me, but that's so we go through the water and the hydrography and our watersheds. We get a little bit into the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. We had a couple of recommendations here. I was going back and forth, and I'm happy to have the Wetlands Commission weigh in on this a little bit, because the Wetlands Commission charge is really different from the Planning and Zoning Commission's charge in the Plan of Conservation and Development, in terms of their job is pretty explicitly regulation of already identified wetlands. So there's not necessarily a lot of big plans, big goals for them, but we look at things like fee schedule, regulations, making sure we're updated, and educational materials, just to make sure people are better informed. But we wanted to acknowledge that wetlands protection is obviously a key, broadly speaking. And then we get into the drinking water again, the split between Putnam WPCA and the Willimantic WPCA. Sort of talking about how our role in those watersheds, and making sure that we encourage compliance with those regulations, watershed etiquette, water quality protection, and that sort of thing.
Just want a quick question, John.
Yes.
Are there houses in Woodstock that get their drinking water from Putnam?
Yes. I believe some of the places in Harrisville that are sewered, I think, also have some water lines, I believe.
I thought it was just community wells. I didn't think we had any water lines.
Is that right? Okay. All right.
I don't know. I didn't, but that's what I was thinking. It might be over that way, but I didn't. Certainly don't see any. When I'm biking, I don't see any things in the road that it would indicate that there's water.
There's public water lines. I could have sworn that there was, but
I know there's 12 communal
There's
wells.
communal wells, but not.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know. Do I state that we in addition to numerous private wells, there's supporting public water systems, including 10 community water supplies, 8 non-transient, and 20 transient. So yeah, I guess we don't. I guess we. So I didn't claim that. I had thought there was, but
I mean,
so I think maybe we say. So maybe we want to say, okay. So we said water and sewer, but maybe this is a question. It may not be water. I think that might be the only reference.
Yeah.
Okay.
Search AI says that Putnam WPCA supplies public drinking water to about 20 homes and businesses in the Harrisville section of Woodstock.
There we go.
Along around Peak Brook Road.
There we go. Hey, I'm going to say that's exactly what I just said.
Okay, no, I didn't know, and I was like,
okay. Yep. Thank you. That's a good. This is good ground truthing.
now I know. We
Um,
trust the AI that Eric found.
yeah. Okay.
To the golf course then too?
It's only 20.
No,
No,
the golf course does not have public water. No.
Okay.
That's just the
But
bulk.
it's certainly possible that the apartments across from there do,
Yes, they might.
Big crap.
because that's a fairly high density of units.
Golf course used to pull water from like 10 miles a time. They don't anymore. They don't have it. Yeah.
Big.
Okay, so we talk a little bit more about that, and in terms of aquifer protection, which is obviously important not only for our private wells, but also for the recharge for the public water supplies, particularly in South Woodstock. And then where are we here? This is getting into, I think this is also watershed management and water quality assessments. Some of the work that was done in the Little River watershed over the last couple of years, and focus on protection of water quality, particularly in the Natchog Healthy Watershed Advisory Board. There was a compact, multi-town compact signed a few years back. Relative to our water resources, we talk a little bit about the extremes, droughts and floods, and some of the natural hazard risks, as well as precipitation changes, some of the implications there. I need to break down. These were listed in the plan of conservation, open space and conservation, as sort of draft recommendations. So we need to formalize these into something more specific. To make those true recommendations. Then we get into some of the critical habitats, which are environmentally sensitive species, particularly some of our white cedar swamps and our floodplain forests. We flagged a couple of areas of white cedar swamps, one off of 198 in the northwest corner of Woodstock. As well as looking at some of our endangered species mapping on the natural diversity databases and making sure that we have the best available data for that. And then we break into the cold water streams a little bit, as well as core forest areas. And again, these are sort of critical habitats that we want to illustrate and call out, and again, make some recommendations about making sure that people are well aware of the natural sensitivity, have opportunity to protect their land through PA 490 and other conservation easement programs, and making sure that people understand some of the risks to invasives and pests and things like that. We get into greenways, as well as, so specifically the Little River Greenway, the Natchog River Watershed System, which are the two major ones that we are looking to bolster, making some specific policy recommendations that, like expand riparian buffers, to make sure that we're protecting resources along the stream corridors. And then we get into some matters of pollinator pathways as well, which is a more recent sort of conservation priority. And then we get into open space preservation, which then will bleed into farmland preservation as well. But open space preservation, again, talks about the privately owned lakes, several of the land trust properties, and particularly state-owned land, the Nipmuc State Forest. But broadly speaking, there are not a ton of sort of publicly available government-owned open space properties. It's primarily our bodies of water and Nipmuc. But that said, the large forest blocks, and particularly the farmland, which is sort of safeguarded somewhat under PA 490 or under farmland preservation, does provide a great deal of open space in Woodstock. Right. People aren't interrupting. I'm assuming you can still hear me, but
Yes,
I'm gonna continue.
I have a question,
yeah.
real quick. Protected open space.
Yes.
The Wyndham Land Trust included in that? Is that what some of the private areas are?
Yes, I believe I mentioned Wyndham Land Trust. Yes, including Wyndham Land Trust and Roxbury Land Trust. Yeah.
Okay.
On page 39.
Wyndham just bought New Roxbury, I believe.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
John,
did they take them over?
Yeah.
to say that Wyndham is now the new
Sure.
Rocks.
And is the Yale Forest somewhere in here? I know that's a private ownership, but I didn't hear you mention that the Yale Forest was a fairly sizable block.
Is that in Woodstock?
That's what I thought.
Some of it.
I don't know how much is in
Not a lot.
how much is in Woodstock. It's mostly Eastford Ashford, I believe.
I thought there was some up there.
Yeah.
So it was a tiny bit, I live right.
And so
near
it could
there.
be, I mean, it could be right. So if you look up in the northwest corner, if that's where you're looking, we have a couple of categories of private open space, and that certainly could be.
The water company, so.
Is that, okay? Okay,
I think Yale's land is on the very western border of Woodstock.
right in
which
here,
then extends over into eastern Ashford. Maybe a little bit north of that
yeah,
might be theirs.
okay. As, I mean, so just, is it worth noting Yale Forest?
Their website says that it does include Woodstock.
Okay,
And you do have on that table on page 39, the asterisk comment saying that the holdings of the former New Roxbury Land Trust have been merged with Wyndham Land Trust.
did I, oh, I said that somewhere else? Oh, yeah, yeah, right there, okay, yeah. Okay. All right, moving on, agriculture preservation. We want to see if we can collide with Joe's other housing comment before we finish up today. Okay, agriculture preservation. There was a lot of stuff written by like in the plan that we sort of inherited when I started. There was a lot of writing about the agriculture preservation and viability. So the details of challenges to modern agriculture are sort of inherited. Then we talk a little bit about some of the preservation efforts that have been successful over the past couple of decades, and as well as recommendations on sort of continuing that progress both through policies and policies, education, information resources, and continued acquisition. But the majority of the discussion about farming in Woodstock tends to be we merged it into the develop portion of this plan because agriculture being an important economic driver, if that makes sense. And then I think this might be the last section. No, not the last section. The last couple of sections in the preserve section deal with historic preservation, noting obviously our many centuries of history, both colonial and pre-colonial, and note that our historic, both the National Register District, which is also the historic district on Woodstock Hill, talking a little bit about that process, the Historic Properties Commission, and the properties that they had historically managed. The Properties Commission has not been particularly active, so we make some recommendations about merging operations for HPC with another commission. Just try to get back on top of that. And then we get into cultural and scenic resources, talking about our scenic roads, which is obviously an important matter for the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as nationally recognized state byway, Route 169. And get into some of those recommendations, particularly enforcement and information about the town scenic road ordinance. And that is a whirlwind tour through the preserve section, or protect section, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So I think we had planned to just talk about the introduction and the preserve section or protect section. We can continue to go further unless this is a good time to sort of stop it for now.
Well, I mean, we've covered a lot. I don't know what the commissions, do we want to start on the develop, or do we want to tackle that? Because I mean, that's going to be a lot more involved in what we're all about. A lot of these other things have been involved a lot of other commissions in town. And maybe we should just kind of take a break on this and everybody can reread or double check this development part, because that's really our wheelhouse where we have a lot of stuff to say.
So I had a really basic question. Implementation, if you add up all these things, it's an unbelievable amount of money. And there's nothing in this that I saw that addresses how these things would be prioritized. And what the process would be for picking and choosing these things. When you lay out a huge number of things that should be done. And in our current financial situation. What's realistic? And how are we gonna deal with it?
Well, I think that. John said that in implementation, they had kind of prioritized lists, and there's, I mean, obviously. There's no magic pool of money to do these. I think the plan, the idea of the P O C D is to have a plan in place that we can work on over the next 10 years, and. It's something, we can do some of these things, that'd be great. If we can't, I mean, if there's no money, there's no money, we can't do it.
But
But I
there's
mean,
not
but
even a
it's-
process for sort of ranking these as, you know, this should be done first, this should be done second. Just a grab bag of things.
There's, in the back. it
In the
has-
back, you said there is a prioritized.
It's
list
like
of-
ongoing or one.
It gives you a time frame or ongoing, and it breaks it down, so the time frame kind of is a priority in a way, like if,
Yeah.
or. Kind of,
I'm talking about section 7, which is implementation. And I don't see anything that ranks these or
Yeah.
prioritizes.
but. I think. That's not really the job of the plan. I think the plan is to say, this is what needs to be addressed, and then. All of the other, like the head bodies, like the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, they would decide. Out of what's given to them, what is most important. You know what I mean? I don't think the people who come up with the plan can dictate. What's gonna happen for the next 10 years. It says, this is what should be addressed. These are the people that need to address it. These are our recommendations. Here you go. And I think that prioritizing is probably more in their hands than in the plan's hand.
But isn't that part of a plan? Prioritize?
I mean, we can suggest prioritize,
Prioritization,
get that word.
yeah.
And, you know, but I mean, it's like it's like building a 10-year business plan. You know, the first 2 years are pretty set, and then after that, it's dreams.
But I would think during the whole discussion, months long of the different committees talking about it, to be a sense that, you know, under the develop section, these are the top 2 or 3 things that have priority. I mean, there are a lot of recommendations in here and might want to say, you know, regulation change, the top priority in develop versus anything that requires expenditure, or based on the discussions that have taken place and the importance people have put on the recommendations. I think that would be, I mean, it can be the prioritization of the P O C D committee. Doesn't mean it has to be the priority setting of Board of Selectmen or PNC or Conservation Commission.
And a lot of these are just kind of how we want to build our regulations that run the town, so
Right.
that, there's not necessarily an expense. You know,
But I think maybe later on, we may want to talk about when we get to the section 7 and then all the list of recommendations. I think that's a discussion we can have of which one do we think? Could be listed 1, 2, or 3. I mean, trying to take all of these recommendations can be very discouraging and daunting if you look at this whole list, but if you
One
can
thing
break
I
it
like
down.
about incorporating the plan of conservation into it is. And a lot of other things, we've included like the water, the other agencies, so a
Right.
lot of the work, they're doing some of it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
plan is. Very much inclusive of using other resources and tying into what we have, which I think makes the implementation of several things much easier also.
I could see that on that plan.
Yeah.
The different commissions or boards are
Yep.
charged with looking at these recommendations,
Then we have the
which
whole-
is good.
It's all
Yeah.
in one packet, so
Right.
each town doesn't have, each committee doesn't have its own, so anybody can kind of go in here and say.
And there's lots of references to, you know, state resources and regional resources and water consortiums and stuff, so like they have a lot of that work done, it's just a matter of us. Taking the information and putting it, a lot of it is putting it on our website or just, you know, acknowledging the work done by others, which is helpful in checking off a lot of these boxes.
So I agree, and I think if that's the case, then there should be some statement of how this document is to be used to effectuate or affect these different recommendations.
Well, I think the end of our review would be a great time to do that. Let's get through the whole thing. Yeah, I like that you brought that up, but you know what I mean? We should think about, as we're going forward, since you brought it up, how much we want to step into, you know, prioritizing. Is that our role? Is it not our role? How, where do we want our boundary to be? And how?
Again, I think it could be just a recommendation from this committee of these are the top 10 priorities. Nobody has to follow it, really. But because there are a whole bunch of recommendations that people can pick and choose from. But I don't see any problem with that.
Or they may change slightly over the next 10 years, and we
right.
need to adapt and probably revisit this to see what's changed that would require a different kind of action.
And much to Doug's not here, but his main complaint has been in the past that we've done a POCD and then just stored it away and
Mhm.
never looked at it again until we had to do it again. So one of the goals is try and make a document that we actually work with and use over the next 10 years. So that, you know, if God forbid, we have some free time on
Yeah.
planning and zoning, we can go and say, okay, this is what we should be working on. Like, we've already started working on some of the recommendations that are ready.
Right. So, I mean, there are a couple of ways of doing it. I mean, we could certainly, if, you know, if the sentiment is, and as you guys have recognized this, you know, we break these down into whose job it is, what the rough time frame, which is a little bit of a proxy for priority and cost. And so, you know, if we wanted to break it down, like we could do a separate implementation table broken down by lead entity so that each, you know, the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance and the Conservation Commission and Agriculture Preservation and Planning and Zoning each have their essentially to-do list. That again, and I think we chose not to be too overly prescriptive about who, you know, when you're dealing with commissions and entities that you don't really have control over, which ones they do first, other than saying, all right, these things are cheap. You know, they're administratively accomplished. It's a change of policy, it's a change of regulation, and which are expensive, you know, which is, you know, building a new recreation center or a new school, or, you know, purchasing a huge chunk of open space. You know, so the hope would be that the collective wisdom of the entity that is in charge of that would, you know, read into this combination of time frame and cost and establish their own priorities. But, you know, there's certainly lots of room to do, as Joe said, maybe a top 10, or to restructure this in terms of, you know, lead entity by lead entity. But we can get there.
Yeah. As far as prioritizing, we should have like the agriculture committee prioritize the agriculture, so that what they think, and the wetlands or the conservation committee prioritize. I have a lot of trouble with that word thing. Their recommendations for that section, so that so that we're not making decisions about what other commissions should make important.
Right, which was kind of my thought
Yeah,
in
that's.
giving it their decision. You know, whether they decide after it's written or whether they give us input and say what they think it is now, it's still their choice.
Yes.
Yeah, ask away.
John, we don't have to go into it now, but I'll just throw it out so maybe you can look at it. So ready for the next time on page 52, that table that I referenced. Just trying to understand, and I know it came from our affordable housing plan.
Yes.
But I'm trying to understand how it says that the title says how many Woodstock families are in need of affordable housing.
Yes.
So this table, as I read it, says these, the first bullet says there are 775 households.
Mm-hmm.
That meet the definition of low, very low. But does that imply that they're already living in Woodstock?
Yes, those are Woodstock households.
So it's not like there's a shortage of 775 households that are needed.
No, do we say that?
No, but I think that's
So
the impression.
those, but so broadly speaking, those households, on the count of by virtue of their income range, are almost certainly um, struggling with affordability and are paying significantly more than 30% of their annual income on maintaining their household housing situation, whether it's renter or owner. Ownership being mortgage and taxes, as well as, heat, hot water, blah, blah, blah. And renters just being, rent and utilities.
Right.
Those low income, very low income, et cetera, are considered what's the term of art? Shoot.
Okay, I don't need the explanation.
Yeah.
I was just trying to understand
Right,
how.
but it's existing families that are lower
families
income and
that
are struggling. Yes, exactly.
And I know it's not up here, but if you have the affordable housing plan that was put together,
Yep.
page 44, if you can look at it later, I don't need it tonight. It just suggests that there's a excess supply of a housing gap analysis based on income versus the actual rent that's rent and mortgages for a family of 4 households. It's just an interesting contrast to this table.
Okay.
So anyway.
All right. I'm gonna put that's let me just put a comment there. Joe, you're saying
Yeah.
that is a page 44 of the affordable housing plan.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, while we're talking about this, it's how many families in Woodstock are in need of affordable housing. Does this include like families living with grandparents, or is it families or households? Like,
This is it's a good question. This is I think a screenshot from the affordable
Right.
housing plan. So I didn't generate this.
That made me think.
And this
like,
does say
there's plenty of my age people living with their parents and their kids in this town where there's 3 generations. So are they?
The basis of this statistical analysis, I believe, is households, not families. Although the title of this one is called families. I think for purposes of this analysis, a unit living under the same roof is considered a household or a family for purposes of this analysis. But I think the statistically accurate statement would be households. And so, if adult children living at home happen to be both a household and a family, but
It seems like we may need a new title for this.
yeah. So I will. Yeah. I will.
Pretty much, yeah.
Should be titled something like, how many households?
I may have to recreate. Yeah.
Meet the definition of low income, whatever, instead of need affordable housing. It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yep. Good call. Yeah. And that's we've identified little elements of which that I was not the direct author of, but it was useful information. And so some of the whys are a little bit opaque, but yeah. Okay, good. Thank you, Joe. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else have any comment? Mr. Young? Good. Second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Move.